Among people who come into wealth, particularly those who've built it themselves, there's one mistake I've seen repeated so often and so consistently that it's become a kind of case study. It won't show up in a headline. Nobody gets sued for it. It might not even look like a mistake for years. But when it finally does surface, the cost is measurable in millions. What is it? Believing that success in one domain implies competence in others. If we were to take the TARDIS back to Chris Sacca in his early days, up 12 million, then suddenly down 4 million in debt, what was the mistake? He assumed his success as a solo stock picker translated into managing complex risk structures. It didn't. And when the market turned, the lack of insulation nearly wiped him out. As we know, Sacca recovered. Good for Sacca, but the lesson remains. Smart doesn't equal immune. Confidence, when applied outside your zone of competence, can cost you everything. And among the newly wealthy, this kind of confidence bleed, leading to lost fortunes, is fairly routine. So if you've got headphones nearby, now would be a good time to put them on, step on your treadmill, get on a bike, and let's spend the next few minutes reflecting on how this mistake tends to show up and what might help prevent it. This is Tang from Well Situated. These are my opinions and constitute neither legally certified nor professional advice. It's an understandable mistake if you've spent a decade or two building businesses, navigating against brutal competition, managing people, making bets with imperfect data. Years of that, and it's all paid off for you. Of course, it's natural to feel your instincts are good, and they probably are. But instinct is contextual. Judgment, contextual. What made you formidable in your business may not translate so cleanly into your investing, your asset protection, your philanthropy, governance, long-term risk mitigation. And when the newly wealthy fail to recognize that boundary, when they believe their intelligence is portable, universal, that's when the damage begins. So in practical terms, what do I mean? I mean, a founder who's successfully scaled a tech company assumes she can manage a complex private portfolio with no CIO, no investment committee, no documented process. An entrepreneur who made his fortune in consumer goods believes he can underwrite commercial real estate or venture deals based on gut feel because he can, air quotes, read people. A couple just off navigating a great exit assumes they can now self-manage their estate planning, their tax optimization, their charitable giving, succession structure, whole thing with a spreadsheet or with a family lawyer or with whatever they can remember from business school. These are not stupid people. These are not lazy people. These are hard-charging, intellectually engaged, deeply responsible individuals. But they're also accustomed to winning, accustomed to scoring the game point. And that bias towards self-reliance, which is obviously amazing and has helped them succeed to this point, now quietly becomes a liability. Lest I come off judgmental, let me just share something with you. Some years ago, I was the owner of a small concern, reached a point where it made sense to move on. I'd bootstrapped it, grown it from zero, grown it profitably, received a strong offer from another operator I happen to be acquainted with. You probably already know what I did next. Rather than involve attorneys or formal advisors, yes, we shook hands and closed the deal ourselves. It took me about a year to understand what that decision had cost me. I'd undercut myself for what, suffice it to say, was a substantial amount of value on that table. Wasn't misled, no blame to place. I simply didn't know what I didn't know. I had treated a major liquidity event with the same tools I'd used to build the business in the first place. Speed, instinct, trust. It was a mistake. What I lacked wasn't intelligence, it was structure. And the price of that omission was non-trivial, I can tell you. A hard but useful lesson I'm happy to say I've never had to learn again. There are two reasons the mistake of overreaching shows up most often among the newly wealthy. First, success creates confidence, and confidence feels transferable. When you've won before, you begin to trust your sense of judgment, even in areas where you have no significant history or track record. This isn't unforgivably irrational. You may, in fact, be excellent at reading people, but this doesn't make you an expert in deal structuring. You may understand brand psychology better than most, but this doesn't equip you to manage currency exposure across a diversified portfolio. You've hired and fired hundreds of people in your business. Doesn't prepare you to evaluate a private fund's risk disclosures or do forensic diligence on a hedge strategy. Second reason overreach is so common is the false sense of insulation wealth can create, early wealth. It's tempting to think that because you're no longer living paycheck to paycheck, you've got a bit of room to make a few mistakes, and to an extent you do. But that mindset ignores two things. Number one, wealth is slippery. And two, the biggest risks tend not to announce themselves. They accumulate quietly. Over-leveraging, poor liquidity planning, tax inefficiencies, uncoordinated trusts, concentration risk, misunderstandings between benefactors and inheritors. These are slow-moving problems. They don't feel dramatic at the time. They compound against you. So how do you defend against that risk? Structure and humility. There's no need to be less confident, just careful about where your confidence belongs. In practical terms, this means focusing on your circle of competence and being honest about what's not in that circle. This means building a small team of domain experts, not to replace your judgment, but to sharpen it. It means documenting how decisions are made, especially when capital is being allocated. And it means routinely asking yourself, what am I missing? As a regular part of your process, what am I missing? None of these things require you to suddenly become timid. Your role is simply shifting. You're going from operator to well-staffed owner-principal. If you've been investing for a while, you'll know the old saying, being right and making money are not always the same thing. You can be exceptionally smart and still lose. Disciplined, organized, principled, still take a massive haircut. The markets don't reward general intelligence. That goes for any domain, any industry, including the one that got you to your current lifestyle level. Markets reward specific knowledge, sound structure, timing. Tools that made you wealthy may not be the ones that preserve or compound that wealth. Seeing that clearly may be the difference between momentary success and generational prosperity. Imagine your financial life as a bridge. Early in your career, you're laying your planks quickly, hustling, improvising, adjusting as you go. If one section feels shaky, you rework it. If anything breaks, you build around it. And this works for that phase of things. But once you've crossed into high net worth territory, you're no longer building a bridge just for yourself. You're building it for your family, your legacy, your future self. At that point, you don't want speed. You want sound engineering. You want load-bearing design, contingency plans for storms, such as they inevitably happen in life. The mistake is thinking you can keep building the same way you did in your earlier days. You can't. Or at least you shouldn't. The cost of even a surface crack is too substantial now. Your success is obviously something very much to be proud of, but if it leads you to underestimate complexity, if it leads you to rely too heavily on instinct, then the very thing that brought you here quietly begins to work against you. There is no shame in specialization. There is no loss of pride in asking for expertise. There's clarity and strength in building the kind of decision environment that protects you from your own blind spots. Consider that at a certain point in life, and this is that point if you're newly wealthy, you never want to be the smartest person in the room. You don't want to guess at anything that deserves years of dedicated professional study. In your own business, you may have been the strategist, executor, auditor, fixer. But is there a possibility you've reached a stage in life where that's become impractical and unnecessary? Take a page from many wise investors before you and draw a clear distinction between where you're strong and where you need structure. Get help building that structure. There's a maturity to knowing what deserves only your energy and what deserves the addition of someone else's. And that, more than anything, is what protects wealth once it's been built. Thanks for listening.